Hello, everyone. Let's start with conservatism, the politics of tradition, order, and prudence. So, this political philosophy emphasized the importance of tradition, social cohesion, and continuity. And this political philosophy, conservatism, it values order over chaos, tradition over radical change, and community over individualism. So, these three are the key pillars. First, order, and second, tradition, and third, community. And the emergence of conservatism was not in any revolutionary fervor, but in silent dread of losing what is valuable. In short, it was the aftermath and the implementation of revolutionary ideas that many of the people, many of the political thinkers, they came to mourn at the losses, especially the losses of traditions, of traditional values. And it reminds us that progress without roots, without tradition, without community, without culture can be destructive, and change must respect history, culture, and inherited wisdom. Now, the historical origin. So, conservatism as a formal ideology was born in the aftermath of French Revolution. So, as I have said, it was in the implementation or the consequences of implementation of revolutionary ideas that conservatism found its roots. So while the liberals celebrated the storming of the Bastille, the anchor, the insignia of the old aristocracy of French society, and which was stormed during the French Revolution. So during the storming of the Bastille, the conservatives they watched in horror when the century-old institution that stood for tradition, the tradition of monarchy, of church, of aristocracy, were violently uprooted. So unka opposition was not so much in the favor of rigid hierarchy of the French society, but their opposition was against the storming, the uprooting of ideas. Now, the key philosopher Edmund Burke, who often called the father of conservatism, he articulated a powerful response in his work Reflections on the Revolution in France. And Burke did not oppose all change. वैसे जैसे यहाँ पे बताया कि the opposition was not against the uprooting of society or uprooting of the rigid French aristocracy, but the opposition was against uh, the institution, the tradition, and the position was also against the radical and abstract reasoning that ignored the complexity of society. So it's like one size fits all approach here, or like saying that just uprooting the old institution, like demolishing a temple, will um, destroy the religion. So, that's a half-cooked idea. मंदिर हो, church हो, या कोई भी any emblem of old aristocracy, any emblem of oppressive society, oppressive system, if you destroy those buildings that stand for those oppressive systems, mere demolition or mere destruction will not ease the operation, will not end the operation. And that was the reasoning of the conservatives. And moreover, any society is built upon, or you can say any society have a forward and backward linkages with many other institutions, many other things. If you uproot the central thing without any conscience, without any due thought, then the result, the whole society, the very skeletal, the scaffold, it will demolish, it will collapse. So that was the key opposition. Now, the famous line of Burke: the society is a partnership between those who are living, those who are dead, and those who are yet to be born. So, in short, society, a complex organ, it is a partnership between all the generation, those that have left and those that are still they still are to be born. And this line captures the conservative view of society as a living organism, not a machine to be redesigned, I believe. That's the gist here, that they consider society as a living organism. And if you want to change something, then you find the root and you resolve the issue at that level. It's not that you just if you are suffering from any fever, any ailment, and you kill that organism. So that is a brainless idea. So ये उनका opposition था that we are not a machine, society is not machine, so it cannot be redesigned. We should go back to root. We find uh, the main problem, main error, and then we should resolve it. Now, the core principles and beliefs of conservatism first is tradition and continuity. So, here, customs, institutions, and practices that stood the test of time embody the collective wisdom. So, here, conservatism or conservatives, both of them, they are in support of this collective wisdom, not the customs per se. So, they are not the orthodox. That's the key difference here, that they are not standing in support for the orthodox element or orthodoxy. They are supporting this collective wisdom कि अगर शुरू से from the time immemorial if some custom has stood the test of time, it means वो custom या वो institution या वो cultural practices वो अभी भी they are proving helpful, then they are a treasure of wisdom, and they should be cherished as such. And the second principle is about human imperfection. So humans are not purely rational beings. They are driven by passions, prejudices, and limitations, and therefore, political system or any revolutionary ideas they must account for human flaws or human impulses. और वो भी सही बात है कि conservatism they highlighted this fact that if any old structure, if any collective wisdom is abolished or demolished or uprooted just out of impulse, then we are kicking ourselves in the wrong foot. Where the third principle is about hierarchy and authority. So conservatism says inequality is natural and necessary for social stability. So you can say stability here, it is provided by the opportunity for mobility. अगर सब कुछ static होगा, if there is no dynamic in here, there are no dynamics in here, there is no agility and flexibility in here, then mobility, opportunity, the innovation, entrepreneurship, ये सब चीजें होंगी ही नहीं. Then about authority, conservatism says authority when exercised with responsibility is a guiding force. Now, the next principle, community and social cohesion. So according to them, because शुरू में ही बताया था कि they give importance to community. So for them, society is more important than the individual. Conservatives fear that unbridled individualism may erode communal bonds. And here, this communalism or this um, uh, primacy to community, it has certain evolutionary ideas or evolutionary backing. Uh, ऐसा नहीं है कि उन लोगों ने evolution terms में सोचा होगा, but I put my own thoughts here that from 300,000 years to the present, 2025, Homo sapiens have walked long, even if that time 300,000 years, it is quite like a dot in the ocean, in the ocean of time. The universe it is 13.8 billion years old. Even Earth is around 4.6 billion years old. उसके सामने 300,000 years is nothing, just like a dot in the ocean. But yet हमारे लिए हमारे species के लिए 300,000 से लेकर अभी तक इतने टाइम में we have survived a lot of things. We have survived the ice ages, we have survived the predators, we have survived the onslaught of time, and all of these survival, all of this human evolution and progress could not have been done without social cooperation, without communalism. In other words, Homo sapiens के अंदर brain है, a complex brain which is around 1450 cc, and many scientists they praise this complexity of human brain. But other than complexity, it is about the social cohesion or they come the social cooperation. Just imagine this thing: 100 brains are a lot more powerful than one brain. You know this thing. And then 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million brains are a lot more powerful than a single brain. So that's the idea, and that's the thing that has brought us here. That's the thing that made the culture, the customs, the institution, and that's the thing that has transmitted the collective wisdom across generation. And here, conservatism, it feared that if in the present time the culture of consumption, the consumerism culture, if they're given unbridled means unrestrained, unstoppable power to individualism, then we are going to lose that edge. वो edge जिसकी वजह से we have survived this long. And the next principle is pragmatism over ideology. Pragmatism means practicality. Conservatives prefer gradual and cautious reform over sweeping or revolutionary changes. And as of private property, they see it as an essential element for personal security, responsibility, and societal stability. So, finally, conservatism thus appeals to a deep seated need for belonging, continuity, and moral order in political life. Now, types and evolution of conservatism. First, traditional conservatism, and this is rooted in the idea of Burke and continental thinker like Joseph the Meister. And this branch of conservatism emphasizes religion, monarchy, aristocracy, and organic unit of society. Because, as the name suggests, this conservatism is more traditional than the inherent nature of conservatism itself. So, traditional ideas only, and this branch it is still influences in many parts of Europe. Now, example, the conservative defense of the British monarchy and the House of Lords, it reflects traditional conservative values in many of the rich European society. Now, the next type is one nation conservatism. This branch of conservatism is developed in 19th century by Benjamin Disraeli in Britain, and it was a response to industrialization and class division by advocating paternalistic policies. Paternalistic means to have fatherly attitude. And here, Benjamin Disraeli and this branch, One Nation Conservatism, they advocated that the rich have a paternalistic duty, that they have a duty to care for the poor, that is also known as noblesse oblige. And this branch emphasized national unity over class conflict. So that's why the name One Nation Conservatism. An example, the post-war Second World War British conservative government, it accepted welfare state policy under ethos of one nation. Now the next branch, libertarian conservatism. So as the name suggests, here two different political philosophy are being merged, uh, liberal liberty and conservatism. So this branch emphasizes individual liberty, free market, and minimal state interference. And the prominent advocate, Friedrich Hayek, his famous work, The Road to Serfdom, and Milton Friedman, both of them, they influenced this branch. And then this libertarian conservatism find itself in neoliberal economic policies, or wo policy which were due to implementation by Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. And both of them, they championed free market economics and deregulation. The next branch, New Right Conservatism. So this branch emerged in 1970s and 1980s that combined economic liberalism, which means free market, and social conservatism, which means family values and patriotism. So you can say two different strands here that are being merged. Economic liberalism means state should not intervene in market. So that's the economic liberalism of free market principles are. And by this non-interference, The market, they are left to fend for themselves based on the principle of demand and supply. And the state, even in those neoliberal society or economic liberalist society, the state interference is minimal. पूरी तरह से स्टेट इंटरफेरेंस नल किसी जगह पे नहीं है. स्टेट इंटरवेंशन जरूरी होता है, स्पेशली ड्यूरिंग द टाइम्स ऑफ क्राइसिस, क्योंकि time during the times of crisis, market is not established and market does not have the wherewithal, the technological and manpower to deal with any crisis situation. ऐसे पैंडेमिक वगैरह में अगर डिमांड एंड सप्लाई पे अगर छोड़ देते तो शायद हम अभी भी पैंडेमिक से बाहर नहीं आ पाते. देन सोशल कंजर्वेटिज्म को आप समझ सकते हैं. फैमिली वैल्यूज एंड पेट्रियटिज्म, दे शुड बी रेस्पेक्टेड. And again, new right conservatism and this libertarian conservatism, both are quite similar in their approach. So much so that both of these ideologies, they advocate for free market and minimal state interference, about economic liberalism. And the key differences are libertarians, they emphasize, they give due prominence to individual liberty, whereas new right conservatism, they give due importance to or a high place to conservative values. And this line, it is associated with leaders like Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. दोनों ही इन दोनों leaders पे हैं that advocated neoliberalism. An example, Thatcher's famous statement, there is no such thing as society, only individuals and families, which reflect new right thinking. New right is the political spectrum, and this political spectrum, it walks over two planks. First, economic liberalism and social conservatism. Now, the next branch, cultural and religious conservatism. So, as the name suggests, this branch focuses on preserving religious values, national tradition, and cultural heritage, which is seen in contemporary political movement that resist multiculturalism or immigration. And sometimes this branch, it gets a new buyer among the new right or alt right political movements. तो आज के टाइम में जितने भी political mobilizations हैं, especially in those country where right wingers are there, right wing governments are there. So here, the cultural and religious conservatism, its flank, its echoes, its point, they find their seclusion, find their not seclusion, find their shelter in right wing politics. Example, the rise of right wing parties in Europe, like the National Rally France, Loyal Justice Party, Poland, and in India and yeah, USA as well. Cultural and religious conservatism is finding their advocate supporters. Now, the major criticism of conservatism. So, although conservatives see themselves as guardian of wisdom, of ancient and collective wisdom, critics argue that conservatism often serves to justify privilege and inequality. Because the collective wisdom thing, the conservative values, all of them, there is only thin line difference between the traditional oppressive system and their advocacy for collective wisdom. क्योंकि वो सेम वही चीज कह रहे हैं, that the old system should be there, that the collective wisdom, the cultural institutions, they should not be abolished, but ultimately they are talking about human progress. So यहाँ पे there is only a very hairline difference कि ultimately what their purpose is. वो ट्रेडिशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन को, एंशियंट सोसाइटी को, उस ऑपरेसिव सोसाइटी को वापस लाना चाहते हैं, या फिर they want to preserve the collective wisdom that was associated with that age. Now, the criticism of liberals, they criticize conservatives for resisting necessary reforms and slowing down social protest. Because conservatives, they, as पहले भी देख चुके हैं, that they are in favor of cautious reform, slow, gradual, and cautious reform. तो ऐसे में जितने भी जो ज़रूरी रिफॉर्म्स होते हैं सोसाइटी को प्रोग्रेस करने के लिए, यहाँ पे कंजर्वेटिव्स वो सपोर्ट नहीं करते। फिर यह है कि अ, उनका जो डर है, द फियर अगेंस्ट अनब्रिडल्ड इंडिविजुअलिज्म। तो ऐसे में भी जो मेजर रिफॉर्म्स हैं, दे आर अबाउट इंडिविजुअलिज्म, कि सोसाइटी के अंदर हर कोई जो है आस्किंग फॉर देयर राइट्स, हर कोई जो है स्टैंडिंग अप फॉर देयर राइट्स, वीमेन आर सीकिंग देयर राइट्स, फिर वीमेन आर सीकिंग प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स। फिर उसके बाद कर सकते हैं जो डिफरेंट पीपल है, लाइक जो LGBTQ कम्युनिटी है, दे आर सीकिंग देयर राइट्स। जो डिवोर्स पीपल हैं, दे आर सीकिंग देयर राइट्स। फिर द पीपल whose property is lost, they are seeking their rights. People are seeking reform of civil code. Civil code means law that regulate inheritance, adoption, divorce, marriage, alimony. तो ये जो रूल्स हैं सिविल कोड में, पीपल आर सीकिंग रिफॉर्म्स हियर। मैं यहाँ पे जितनी भी बात कर रहा हूँ वो सब स्पेशली जो कंजर्वेटिव वैल्यूज़ की बात कर रहा हूँ, सोशल ट्रेडिशन कस्टम्स की बात कर रहा हूँ, ताकि द एक्सप्लेनेशन मेक सेंस। बाकी लोग बहुत सारी चीज़ों में रिफॉर्म्स चाहते हैं, बहुत सारी चीज़ों में चेंजेस चाहते हैं, बट अल्टीमेटली ऑल ऑफ द चेंजेस आर अबाउट इंडिविजुअलिज्म। और ये मेन डर है कंजर्वेटिव्स का। नाउ द सोशलिस्ट आर्गुमेंट is that conservative protect the interest of wealthy by promoting hierarchy। तो एक पहले से ही उनके ऊपर क्रिटिसिज्म है ही है कि what they are ultimately seeking, whether they want to preserve the collective wisdom or the interest of wealthy by promoting hierarchy. Then feminists criticize the conservative because they defend the traditional gender roles, traditional patriarchal society. Then the post-colonial thinkers, they highlight how conservatism often provide ideological support for colonial rule under the guise of a civilized mission. तो मेन क्रिटिसिज्म जो है वो अल्टीमेट उनके मोटिव्स का है, what their real motives are. And since there is a only thin difference between what they seek and what people do not want in their life, in such a scenario, criticisms, arguments, and allegations are bound to arise. Now, the contemporary challenges to conservatism: first, globalization. So, conservatives they struggle to balance national traditions, old customs with the global economic integration. And second, immigration and multiculturalism, their nightmare. The conservatives they advocate for stricter immigration policy because they want to preserve the cultural identity, the old institution, the traditional customs. Then any form of change, especially technological change, is hated by conservatives. So rapid innovation challenges, rapid technological breakthroughs, they challenge the traditional way of life, from family structure to work culture to interpersonal relations. All of them they are being changed at a rapid pace, and such things are not liked very much by conservatives. And finally, the environmental concerns. So traditional conservatism, it respect for protection of environment, stewardship of earth, and this comes in conflict with the new right conservatives, economic libertarianism. तो यहाँ पे दो आइडियोलॉजी हैं, ट्रेडिशनल कंजर्वेटिज्म दैट wants to replicate the traditional time as it was। और ट्रेडिशनल टाइम पे ग्रीनरी बहुत थी, इकोलॉजिकल प्रोटेक्शन था, प्रिजर्वेशन था। एंड जो सेकंड आइडियोलॉजी है न्यू राइट, दैट इज affiliated with the right wing spectrum, and right wing spectrum it is about technological progress and economic libertarianism। So यहाँ पे दोनों आइडिया, if we are going to progress economically, तब trees will be uprooted, then forest will be demolished, forest will be destroyed, new avenues will be found, and mineral wealth will be mined। इन सब के cases में ecological destruction is imminent, or that's where the concern lies। Then examples, In India, the conservative ideas are seen in emphasizing on preserving cultural tradition and national identity. And these ideas, they have found their support not only during historical and national struggle, but during the contemporary political times as well. So historically, nationalist time पे freedom struggle में भी बहुत सारे जो nationalist leaders थे, they used to mobilize people on these conservative ideals. But present में भी जो right wing government है, they often take refuge in these conservative ideas so that people can be mobilized. Now, conservatism in Indian political thought. So historically, thinkers like Bal Gangadhar Tilak and many of his ilks, many of his contemporaries, the nationalist leader, they emphasize the importance of religion and tradition in political mobilization. और ये आपने देखा ही होगा, बाल गंगाधर तिलक हो गया, एंड गणेश आगरकर हो गया, ये एंड लाला लाजपत राय हो गया. तो ये सब जो थे, they started the traditional festivals to mobilize people. जैसे मुंबई के अंदर जो गणेश चतुर्थी है, एंड बंगाल के अंदर दुर्गा पूजा है. So these customs were used for political purpose, but ultimately the plank of the idea, it was conservatism. Then conservative strains are visible in Indian politics in contemporary time. क्योंकि आज भी there are debates going over cultural identity, education policy, national history, and in the contemporary time, the emphasis on Bhartiyata, Bhartiyaness, it is about protecting heritage and tradition. So this is it. In the next video, we are going to talk about socialism, और फिर कुछ ऐसा कुछ जो है जो यूजीसी के पर्सपेक्टिव से I have not covered, I might have skipped, then drop the comment and subscribe the channel. Thank you.